Good morning. This is Ricia Chansky coming once again from Western Puerto Rico. And this morning I'm happy to be talking to Kiara. Kiara, could you just introduce yourself for everyone, please?
Yes. My name is Kiara Rivera. I am an English major from the University of Puerto Rico, and I live in Arecibo, where I'm currently living in Mayagüez, where I work at, in between the semester.
Nice, nice. Kiara, my question was going to be, what are you doing with your time during the physical distancing from COVID-19? But you just mentioned to us that you're working. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your job?
Yes. I am currently working at a supermarket in Mayagüez. It's very close to the university. I started working about 3 months ago to help out my mom. Now that people aren't able to work, especially since my mom works at a very public area. Um, so yes, I'm helping her pay for our expenses.
Nice.
Uh,
Nice. And how is the experience of working in a grocery store during the global pandemic? How has that experience been for you?
I definitely didn't think that. I obviously needed a job, but I didn't think that that would be my first option. But given the circumstances, those were the places where they were asking for more personnel because, especially that specific supermarket that's usually run by students. Like it has a lot of most of the employees are students because it's so close to the university. But with COVID, everyone had to go back home, so they don't have a lot of people anymore. And I had applied before. Um, COVID, but I had kind of forgotten that I had done that. So when they called me to see if I was still interested, and obviously it was a necessity at the time, and it still is. I agreed to start working there, and I had a lot of biases before starting to work there. I was ready for. I wasn't ready especially with COVID. Like I didn't know the things that I was signing up for. That's the better way to put it. Um, I was very scared. Um, because uh, I'm not gonna say all, but a lot of places that are opening, they care more about the money than the safety of their employees. So I thought, what am I signing up for? They might not even have like the necessary equipment or the ways to protect me from COVID. Like and simply they might not care. So
Mhm, mhm.
it was very hard to convince myself to sign up for something that I know that could be harmful for me and my family, especially since we live with old people, like my grandparents. A crash, like they're staying with us. So it's not only me making the choice to risk my life, but it's the choice to risk their life as well. So it's not only me saying yes, I'm gonna work at the supermarket. It's yes, I'm gonna stay away from my family in order to protect them and still be able to work at the supermarket. Um, Concerning the work itself, uh, people, I can't judge people because it's a very difficult situation. So they're more, rude, and everyone's in a rush to leave because it is one of the places that's most prone to exposure to the virus. So obviously people don't want to stay there for long. So the fact that they have to make, I would get to work at 5 in the morning and there's already a line, an insane line at least the first few weeks. Now I feel like it's died down a little, but also the fact that they're kept in their homes.
Mhm.
That I feel like it makes this one time that you get to be in, which is in a way counterproductive because they're trying to avoid each other, but they also see it as this one chance to see other people and talk to them and get this, because we're human. We crave human interaction and warmth and all these things. So the fact that you're keeping people separate, kind of, you know, it's a lot. It's both a physical risk, but it's also an emotional strain. Um, that kind of hopelessness and um, yeah. So it's been
Yeah.
difficult to work at the supermarket, but I I don't know if I should be saying this, but I see this like propaganda then saying that, you know, nurses and grocery store workers and all that, like, we're heroes and we should be happy about it and whatnot. And even though I agree that it's important work and that, you know, we are doing important work, I don't think any essential worker sees themselves as a hero, because part of the reason that they're doing that job is because they need that job. And even though they do have that pull to help people and they enjoy the fact that they're helping people, it also speaks to their own, you know, struggles as they're doing this, because, you know, no one wants to risk their life. I don't think that, obviously it should be applauded, yes, but it shouldn't be seen like, oh, you know, you're doing, yes, you should be happy that you're doing this work, because it's difficult. It's like celebrating part of the problem, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that was very insightful, Kiara. Thank you very much for sharing that. Kiara, you've been really involved in the Mi Maria project for a couple of years now. And before we connected this morning, I was thinking through the fact that you've partnered with a scholar from Egypt who came to Puerto Rico to study the hurricane. You've done oral history work. You've done documentary filmmaking, and you were with me and a team who discovered an abandoned warehouse full of relief goods. And so there's been a lot that you've participated in with this project. And so I'm wondering if, now that we're in a global pandemic, are you seeing any connections between what happened in Puerto Rico after the hurricane and what's happening now during the time of the coronavirus?
But definitely, I feel like in a lot of ways we've been reliving that terrible experience, not only with COVID but with the earthquakes. I feel like Puerto Rico hasn't been able to catch a break. um I remember thinking back with the earthquakes, thinking, "Oh my God, this is like the hurricane again." You know, the fact that we didn't have electricity, sometimes we didn't have water, and people were struggling the same way that they were prior. But we didn't have the physical, like, it didn't seem as dire because some areas in Puerto Rico weren't as affected. So to look at those pictures again of those places that had just rebuilt after the hurricane and see them destroyed, it was very overwhelming. And now with COVID, that, you know, it puts into perspective a lot of things. You know, as I was telling you before, when we started talking, it changes the way, because let me think about this one. The way we connect with people changes because after Mi Maria, like after the hurricane, we got comfort and we were able to cope with the situation together. Like, we had warmth from community. Like, we had all this strength, this overwhelming strength to move forward. But it because we felt so invested in each other's struggles because we had gone through those things as well. So it was this net of support because we were all joined by this awful event, and that's how we moved past it. So now with COVID, the fact that we have to stay apart and help looks very different now because we can't, as you said, we can't go to each other's homes and give that emotional support. Like, best we could do is hand over resources and stuff like that. But it's very different. Like, it's like where everyone's fending for themselves, and you know, like I said, that emotional toll that comes from that separation and not
Mhm.
having that sense of community. So it's very it's like the hurricane to an extent, that, you know, hopelessness and um that question of how do we rebuild society from this, you know, how are we gonna come out from this, that same those same questions of having our the rug pulled from underneath us, you know, that same struggle, but viewed from very
Yeah.
different angles, like the way that we were moving into it is very different, and it needs to be. um Another of the things that I had mentioned before, is the fact that, you know, our work was mainly focused on the injustices that came from that situation. And I feel like the government, our government, and in general government, got away with a lot of things because we weren't able to record them doing these things. Like, there was no coverage of these things they were doing. We found that warehouse, and why was that possible? Because no one knew that those things were happening, and we didn't know that that we found that one in Arecibo, and then there was just one in Ponce and one in Guanica, and that there were all these places that had the storage areas, but it was because we you know, there was no way for us to track this information down at the time. But now with COVID, we're able to point fingers, I guess, more in a more um you know, we're more sure about it because we do have electricity and we do have the internet, and people aren't as limited to this information. Like, there's access to all of this, so the you know,
Yeah.
it's we can hold these people accountable because we have the means to track the information now. So, and not to mention the fact that we all learned from the experience from Maria and the earthquakes. Like, we know what these people are capable of, so we look out for these red flags, and when we see them, we call them out. And you can even tell that the government is very hesitant when presenting us with new information. um just just last press meeting, you could tell that there's that fear that something bad's gonna happen. Like, with me Maria, that summer we pushed the governor out of office, and it was us, that was us as a community that was so affected by all of these things, and we all got together and we did that, and that unity, strength, like, we had that, and we fought for what we thought was fair. And even though a lot of things haven't changed for the better, we still know what we want, and we're still pushing for these things to happen. So now you could tell that there's this hesitance to push our buttons because they know what we're capable of. And I feel like that would be a plus to COVID, the fact that they know we're watching.
Yeah, yeah. That was a really powerful statement on documenting and the need to document what's happening and how organizing happens around that documenting. And you said something really interesting before we started recording about we found a warehouse in Arecibo, and then later they found a warehouse in Ponce, but there wasn't an ability because of electricity and internet, lack of electricity and internet. There wasn't an ability to connect those two things.